Assalamu alaikum. I hope you are doing well. A mixed day today in the markets. We did get slight pullback in the Dow Jones, but who really cares about that index? The Nasdaq was up 1%, the S&P was up 0.5%, and the Russell was basically flat. Something really great that we've gotten since the start of 2025 is a fall in the dollar index, the DXY, and this measures the strength of the dollar against other major currencies. Typically, when we have, typically when we have a fall in an index, that's a bad thing. But for the dollar index, is actually a good thing. It means that a lot of the income that companies make overseas is able to translate to more dollars when it's reported in dollar terms. It also makes a lot of U.S. companies cheaper for foreign investors. So typically, a dollar index that is falling is good for risk assets in the United States. The VIX was down 0.5%. That's kind of surprising considering all the headlines that we're going to go over in this live. By the way, if you enjoyed this live, do leave a like. And if you're not following our portfolios, not following our investments, consider doing so by becoming a PIF member. Link to do so is in the description. Tesla has rebounded quite quickly from the dip that we got after it reported a miss on deliveries in the first trading day of the year. So it dipped all the way to 375 and then has recovered, closed today at 411. We did get a pullback in some Bitcoin miners. On top of the list is BitDeer, which seems to often have a mind of its own. Oftentimes it's running when other miners aren't doing so well, and sometimes, like today, it's pulling back when other miners are doing just fine. For example, today it was down 10%, whereas Iris Energy, for example, was up 3%. Bit Digital was up 5%. To be honest, I was quite pleased to see a pullback in BitDeer because I would like to add more to that position, but not yet. The price isn't juicy enough to warrant adding just yet, at least as per my assessment. Bitcoin smashed through 100,000 today, and it was actually a lot higher. Actually, it went close to 103,000. But now we're at 101,600. What are you going to do? I'll take it. And Doge is at 38 cents again. Solana is at 217. Looking at the heat map for the market, we can see semiconductors today did fantastic. Micron Energy was up 11%. Of the semiconductors and chip makers, Intel was the only red stock today, down 3.19%, which is very concerning when an entire sector is doing well and just one stock isn't. That's kind of concerning for the company. I'm sure Intel investors are scratching their head looking at that map. Now, looking at Bitcoin and historically how it's performed in Q1, we've already gotten a 8.76% return in Bitcoin. The average for Bitcoin in Q1 is 52%, but don't look at the average. This is very skewed. So in 2013, we had 539%, but that's so that's really skewing the average. Something better to look at would be something like the median, which is 8.74% for Q1. Now, I do think that we're going to do better than that in Q1 of 2025. The reason for it is because, well, we've already done better than that. But the year following the halving year is the year that typically has the most gains for Bitcoin. And that's the year that we're in. So I am expecting a beat of the median for Bitcoin, but it's good to know, ballpark where we should be. And for Ethereum, if you're still in Ethereum, may Allah guide you. Um, the Q1 returns so far has been 10.55%. Median is exactly 10.55%. So you've earned your money there. Going back to the dollar index, if we look at how the dollar performed, and I mentioned the bright spot of the market this year has been the dollar index falling. If you look how the market has performed versus 2016, 2017, which was the first, corresponded with the first administration for Donald Trump, we did see a dollar index that fell when he came into power. That's that blue line here. And so we do seem to be kind of following the same pattern. If we do follow the same pattern, that would be very good for risk assets and suggests bullishness at least until February if we're just looking at the dollar index. Now there are other factors impacting the market. There's some nervousness about something called the HMPV virus, and cases are beginning to rise in India. Now, I'm not a doctor, but reading what people are saying about the situation, the virus. This is very different than the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus COVID-19 was completely new in humans and arose from spillover from animals, spread to pandemic levels because there was no prior exposure or protective immunity in the community. This is not the case with the HMPV virus. This is something that is familiar, and many people have already immunity to it. And as per the description, it's just flu-like symptoms. Typically affects the young and the old the most. In that respect, it's kind of like COVID, but it isn't that serious. So hopefully this ends up not being anything. In other news, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, announced the decision to step down, and the market kind of liked that. The Canadian dollar liked that, actually appreciated when he announced it. So we'll see. And who knows, maybe Canada becomes the 51st state of the United States, and maybe Greenland becomes the 52nd state. Who knows? All I know is that the future under a Trump administration is not going to be boring. That I can guarantee. All right, so speaking of the infinite money glitch, and have we found the source of infinite money? And it appears that some companies kind of think perhaps we have. Metaplanet, a Japanese corporation, eyes upping its Bitcoin holdings, taking a page out of the MicroStrategy playbook. Metaplanet holds 1,700 Bitcoins and wants to increase to 10,000 Bitcoins. And so it is, borrowing and adding like MicroStrategy has been doing. And Cooler Technology is doing the same. It invested 21 million in Bitcoin. Total holdings now 430 Bitcoin, which is a very small drop in the bucket compared to its microcap. So 21 million versus a microcap of close to 800 million. But the CEO mentioned that their strategy is to allocate up to 90% of their surplus cash reserves into Bitcoin. My spidey senses are tingling. I understand the argument for using Bitcoin as a reserve asset, but if something is too good to be true, it is. There is no infinite money glitch. I think these companies are underestimating the risk that they're taking. And this kind of leads me to believe that, there may be a lot of volatility for Bitcoin ahead. So, oftentimes when you see people taking risks, I think you should be very cautious. And so I would I would I would highly advise not overstretching yourself and not getting too complacent, making sure that you have dry powder in case we get an opportunity in the market that's very tempting, a pullback in the market that makes things very discounted, and not to FOMO into any positions. Now, in other crypto news, Solana is set to experience some volatility as the new administration takes power January 20th. Only 5 days later, there are 4 Solana ETF applications that will meet their first deadline. So the SEC will have to comment on those applications, either approve them or tell them, hey, change something, or I want to, or ask additional questions and require clarifications. If a Solana ETF is approved, that should be good for Solana. It should be good for crypto generally. It should be good for Dogecoin, I will say, because I still don't know why a Dogecoin ETF is not being pushed. I think eventually it will be. But I think you'll see a lot of other tokens start pushing for their own ETFs if a Solana ETF is approved. If it's not approved, I don't think there'll necessarily be too much of a pullback on it. But there will be some volatility. I think it's expected around that date regarding Solana, and perhaps that will impact other cryptos as well. So that is all of the most important news from today. I'll take some questions very quickly. Should we be concerned about Elon's comments on the UK? Yeah, I do think these are cause for concern regarding the general environment in the West. And I think Elon embodies the personalities of a genius in business, but a moron in pretty much everywhere else, like no one else can. So he embodies both personalities simultaneously. For us, we're invested in Tesla. We're not invested in Elon. And that's what I'll say about that. What are my thoughts on Trump's comments on Canada? I don't know if I want that many people with French origins to be in the same country as I am. Just kidding. Yunus says, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. Dr. Boss says, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Does Musk antics on Twitter pushing Islamophobic narratives give you any pause or reason not to invest in companies he runs? How should we navigate as Muslims? I just said, in my opinion, is that I'm invested in Tesla, not Musk. And I don't think, our response to things should be like I look at Maslahat al-Muslimin. That's what I look at. I think Maslahat al-Muslimin is to be owners in this company called Tesla. That's what I care about. And, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot just to spite someone. I think he's very misguided. And I really don't care. I really don't care about him. I think it I think it actually speaks a lot to Islam that the one of the smartest people who is an atheist has so much animosity towards Islam. I think that speaks to the fact that Islam is really the only religion left on earth, and atheists, their hostilities towards Islam, you don't see them hostile towards Christianity or towards Hinduism or towards any other religion, is because they don't really see them as legitimate threats, legitimate competition to their ideology. But they do see Islam as such, and that's why there's so much animosity towards it. And there will always be. And by the way, you don't see just this animosity from atheists. All religions have animosity towards Islam, and the reason is very simple. It's because if you imagine you can very simply um, conclude, since all religions say different things, and not consider atheism as a religion, because it takes a leap of faith. But if you consider all religions, they're saying different things. So only one can be right, and everything else is false. So one of the ways to figure out which one is right and which ones are false is to figure out which one is being singled out by all the others. Like, ask yourself that question. So there's one truth and everything else is false. And so one of the hints as to which one is true and which ones are false is simply to ask yourself, okay, which one religion does it seem like all the other religions are against? And that's the true religion, and everything else is false. So I think that, and I see something that, some of the comments that, Elon is making just further confirms that in my mind. Like, oh yeah, he's very hostile towards Muslims because he only sees Islam as a legitimate competition. The rest he doesn't really take seriously. Hello, Rakaan. You mentioned that last year there could be a dip in January. Do you think it will happen? Well, I do think that some of the dip may have been front run in December, the last like week or two of December. We saw that weakness, and that may have front run a bit of the drop. I still think that we're probably going to come up on some volatility. That means some decline in January. I still think that's the case. It may have been, smoothened out a bit because of the pullback that we got at the end of December, and also smoothened a bit by the dollar index, the dollar actually losing strength. So, but I still think that that decline is, there's a greater than 50% probability of that. But who knows? This is, I'm asked, and I don't like to sort of not give an answer. But short-term movements in the market is very hard to actually predict. Could you please explain futures trading? I do have a video on futures. I'd encourage you to check it out, brother. Someone like bro, new subscriber here. So, brother, we did buy back Tesla at last week when we got the dip. If you're not a subscriber, consider doing that. But if you I'm hoping that you didn't sell everything. We never sell everything. We take profits, which is just a percentage, small percentage typically, of our holdings, and then we buy back on pullbacks. So, if you sold everything, I would just dollar cost average back in and then never sell everything again. And then in the future, just try and snipe at opportunities. So Vittorio says, what should be a Muslim's duty if he deems a stock is overpriced? Can he invest in that? So I think we're like, I don't want to mix things together. I don't think that's necessarily a like a halal and haram question. How you deal with assets if you think they're overpriced. That's more of a business decision. I don't think there's necessarily a moral moral implications to it. I think obviously if you think it's going up, buying it is a legitimate thing. If you think it's going to go down, selling it is a legitimate thing. So that's how I would deal with it. But a longer term, I think if you're asking me, what's the most profitable policy, the profitable policy is never to buy something if you think it's overpriced. That's the most profitable policy. And so, over time, if you take the average result of that policy, that's going to yield the best result. So With that being said, if you enjoyed this live, do leave a like, become a PIF member if you aren't already. Until next time, make sure to take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.